What's going on, everybody? I'm Jory Goodman, the Time Teller. Welcome to another installment of Microbrand Monday, and today we're looking at a new offering from Beaufort Watches, which is a watchmaker that we took a look at way at the beginning of Microbrand Monday. And yeah, this is a new diver from them, a kind of vintage-inspired diver known as the Cavalli. Whereas first we took a look at, I believe, their Aero Timer is what they called it, a really nice salmon dial watch. But yeah, I'm excited to see what's in store for today, so let's tell the time and tear into the box. It is 3:53 p.m. Let's get down to business. All right, guys, let's take a look. Now, this is a prototype, I should say, so this is not going to be the packaging that you will get when you purchase this watch. And I believe, you know, this being a prototype, this is a media piece, so I'm sure it's been through some other reviewers, and then it will go to some other reviewers after me. So let's take a look. Some bubble wrap. Some I think this is like wax paper, actually. All right, here it is. Yeah, kind of a vintage, no crown protector, slim lugs. Look at that, almost like a box cut crystal, but not really. Actually, I think it is. Let's get up close. Okay, guys, and you know, I just unboxed it right before your very eyes. I just held the watch in a few positions, and the second hand is already ticking away, which means this is in fact an automatic movement. This watch utilizes an STP-111 automatic, to be exact. And you know, we've reviewed a few microbrands that have actually utilized that movement, and it's fairly accurate, fairly reliable, easy to source. And I actually like that it's not a Seiko Instruments NH35, because although the NH35 is just fine, I'm kind of sick of it. I don't know if you can hear the birds outside, but they agree with me. They're squawking away out there, and they agree. And yeah, the closer we get to this crystal, it is kind of a box crystal. I love how it is very high atop that bezel. It just screams vintage diver. So for those of you who ask me, ever since I reviewed that, what was it? The Axios, that newest Axios diver, people were like, hey, what other modern vintage inspired divers are there? Well, I guess this is another option, right, to add to the list that I gave you during that live stream. So yeah, this Beaufort Cavalli definitely has that vintage aesthetic. But let's go ahead and talk about the spec sheet. Okie dokie, so I'm gonna let you guys kind of admire this gorgeous textured fume dial. We can see closer towards the chapter ring, it is very dark, deep blue, but then as we get more towards the center spindle, it is nice, vibrant, and bright. And that sapphire crystal is showing off a bit of flecto there. But let me rattle off the spec sheet. So the case and bracelet, 316L stainless. You know, that's pretty standard nowadays. Now it says 39mm case diameter with a 20mm lug width, but don't worry, I'm gonna verify that for you in a moment with my digital calipers. And indeed, according to the spec sheet, it is a box cut sapphire. Heck yes. And it does have AR coating. Whether it is on the inner side or the outer side of that crystal, they did not specify. STP-111 automatic movement. Does have a fume dial with BGW9 Super Luminova Lume, which we will of course test. So, according to the value listed on the parcel, this is coming in around $250 US. I believe that's probably an early bird price. I'm not quite sure exactly what the official price is going to be when this comes to market. I know they're already running a wait list on this watch. If I get some more information by the time you know, we go ahead and release this episode, I'm gonna put it on screen right here. But so far, you know, the specs, perfectly fine. The overall aesthetic, you guys already know I'm into, because I'm a big sucker for these kind of modern takes, or I should say vintage modern divers, or is it a modern vintage diver? a bit of a conundrum. But you know what I mean, these vintage inspired divers, I'm just an absolute sucker for it. But let's go ahead and really scrutinize that dial. We'll take a look at the handset, the indexes, the date complication. We'll see how the crown winds up, and or I should say threads and unthreads. And yeah, by the way, I'm pretty sure it does have a threaded crown because this does have a 200-meter water resistance rating. So if everything feels nice and proper, then this could be a very functional, fun, aesthetic diver. And again, for that $250 price tag, at least the one that was listed on the parcel here, sounds like you won't have to break the bank for it either. But, you know, let's go ahead and hold the watch a bit more. Okay, so crown setting and function. We've seen a signed crown, very nice. There's a bit of serrations here. It's not super duper aggressive, and I wouldn't consider this like an oversized crown. By the way, guys, they are doing construction on my street, so if you hear some tools, then usually I'm the only tool you guys have to hear on this channel, but there are some power tools outside. So yeah, not an oversized crown, but it's not like difficult to grab or anything. Let's see about the crown setting. That should be the first setting, which should be the date complication. Yep. And then the second setting, second hand has stopped, which makes this a hackable movement, but we already knew that. First position, second position. Okay, two very distinct and tactile clicks. I love to see it. Let's move the handset around a bit. Yeah, no weird grittiness. And we've exposed that gorgeous broad arrow hour hand. Again, very vintage of them. All right, the crown is nice and smooth threading and unthreading. Let's take a look at this bezel. You can see it almost feels, or I should say looks, like it has some form of sapphire inlay. It's not quite transparent, but it almost looks translucent. I would not be surprised if this is loomed as well, the markers, but we're gonna have to test that in a little bit. Yeah, no play at all. Very true ratcheting feeling. And what I mean by true is that if we line it up to the minute hand, that bezel isn't going to back out on you. So this is something that we could actually use as a fairly accurate timing device, right? So I just use it to, you know, time the DiGiorno pizza in my oven. But for you guys at home that might have, you know, actual needs for this type of thing, you could trust this bezel. The time teller channel, stamp of approval. Let's go ahead and center it so you OCD freaks don't freak out. Yeah, very nice functional bezel. I am happy about it. Now let's take a look at the date complication. Okie dokie, as we close in on this date window, you guys already know what I'm gonna say. I've been doing this long enough that you guys are probably aware of what I'm going to say. Yes, thank you for the dark date wheel. Again, doesn't stick out like a sore thumb. It's nicely bordered. I should say the number is very centered in that date window. And again, it being bordered just lets it pop enough that it's highly visible and crystal clear. But, you know, it not having a bright date wheel makes it so it's not a total eyesore. And I love it. It's just kind of stealthy, sleek, smooth, works perfectly well with that Fume dial. And yeah. It being centered, that's just icing on the cake, right? Now moving up a bit further, we can take a look at this writing here, this font, I should say. It says automatic. Now, in this shot, because of the texture and probably the lighting, it's a bit difficult to make out that red lettering, at least on playback. I can see it's a little bit fuzzy, but that says automatic. Then below it says water resistant, 200 meter, 660 feet. I have no issue with that. It's not like a huge paragraph of writing on this dive watch. I'm perfectly fine with it. Let's go a bit above the spindle and take a look at the signage. Bada bing, bada boom, Beaufort Cavalli. I love this freaking textured dial. It looks so good with the applied indexes and that broad arrow hand. I don't know, it's just so vintage, but again, it's polished enough. It's just, I really dig the watch's overall design. It's not offensive, big, chunky, hyper modern. And for those of you guys who don't like faux patina, you know, they didn't go the straight up overkill vintage route by making everything look super old. This is still nicely polished and new, modern, but again, old at the same time. I love it. I just absolutely love it. And again, look at the 10, how it pops off that dial, and the 2, how it's just hovering above that textured pattern. Great design language here from Beaufort. Beaufort, people are gonna complain about however I pronounce it, but Beaufort, we'll just say that. Beaufort. Now, I want to show you the secondhand ticking away here, but I'm going to move the watch around a little bit so I can show you just why I love box crystals. As we move it around, and again, this is a sapphire crystal, we get that tad bit of distortion there. And some people, you know, ever since I started my channel, they've written to me saying, you know, you're wrong about this. I don't like crystal distortion. I think it looks ugly and it makes the watch difficult to read. But for me, who I suppose just wants to live in the past, I don't know, that tad bit of crystal distortion on these hyper-domed crystal and box crystals, it just looks so nice, and it just adds a new dynamic to the overall you know, look of the watch. And you get something new every time you're telling the time, because again, you're not angling your wrist at the same spot every time you look at your watch. Sometimes you're moving it around, and I like that dynamic look. Catches you off guard a little bit. And it's, you know, it's fun. It's just fun. And as we focus in on the handset, we can't see any burrs. There's no jagged edges, no tool marks, just a mirrored polished handset, nicely finished, no brushed grains. They chose, again, for a mirrored finish, and a broad arrow hand. I love it. Again, vintage enough to be kind of different and interesting, but still highly visible and totally functional as a handset. It's not something so weird that you wouldn't be able to tell the time. And again, I just think it looks so nice, sharp and sleek, as opposed to the kind of textured fume underneath. It's just a really nice contrast, the way the indexes and the handset play with that dial. It's just beautiful. Great job. All right, guys, let's break out the digital calipers and let's measure the dang thing. So this watch does not have any crown guards, so we don't really have to worry about that. We'll just put it right next to the crown. 39 millimeters on the button. Awesome, their spec sheet was accurate. Now, let's measure the lug to lug. 48.1 millimeters. Let's go ahead and measure the thickness. 13.5 millimeters thick. Very, very versatile dimensions here, as we can see, but to confirm, let's go ahead and put it on my 7.5-inch wrist for reference, and I have a feeling that this is going to wear very easily, whether you have larger or smaller wrists, but let's put it on to find out. All right, guys, here it is, the Beaufort Cavalli on my 7.5-inch wrist, and sure enough, the lugs are not encompassing the entirety of my wrist. It's not hanging over each side, and it is not a cumbersome watch whatsoever. This is going to be a very versatile piece for those of you looking for a vintage kind of diver, but still with the build quality of a modern watch. And again, the 200-meter water resistance rating, the sapphire crystal, and the hyper tight tolerances here, you know, everything feels really good, and you definitely won't have to baby this thing. All right, taking a look at the clasp, you know, some nice brushed finishing here. Just says Beaufort. We have some retention there with the 2 buttons. We have some finishing here, some perlage, and looks nicely finished. Now, we have some pretty much kind of a standard oyster, quote unquote, bracelet, not really. This on the prototype, I do see some links that are kind of not, I don't know, they don't have the same problem that Pagani design watch had, where they're like immobile, but a few of the links are kind of cattywampus. I don't know how to really, you can see it here though. These 2 links are kind of like digging downwards, where some of them are picking back up. And it's not that they're like immobile, it's just that's their like normal position, I guess. But I just noticed something that I didn't notice the entire time, and I think you can see it. It's out of focus, but let's get up close. A display case back. That's right, not a whole lot of divers with display case backs, but they chose to put one on this watch. And yeah, it's showing off minimally decorated movement, Not a whole lot going on here. I mean, the rotor doesn't even have the watchmaker's name on it, but this is a prototype, so perhaps they will change that. But everything seems pretty nicely finished. I do have a smudge from my wrist back here. But other than that, everything looks pretty dang nice. Again, I didn't see any sediment on the dial. We might do a once over after we do the lume test. Get in focus here. But everything actually looked really, really clean. And again, man, the applied indexes and that dial, how can you not stare at that dial? And the dimensions just right in that sweet spot. Yeah, all right, time for the lume test, and then I'll give you my conclusion. All right, guys, so the lights are pretty much off. We have a little bit of ambient lighting coming in here, but there's no real glow yet. Let's hit it with the torch, the UV torch. Oh yeah, we can see there is lume on the bezel, but it's not the best. Okay, I'm gonna be honest. Actually, the bezel is glowing better than anything else. Those indexes are pretty much not glowing at all. What did I tell you about BGW9? It is so hit or miss, guys. Okay, so the handset's glowing, the bezel's glowing. I really do like how the entire bezel glows, just out of, you know, the markers are glowing and then the kind of whole inlay is glowing, but it's kind of weird. The bezel's glowing better than anything else. So yeah, again, blue lume, that's kind of the flavor of the week, it seems, with Microbrands lately. Let's start moving away from that, guys, because it doesn't glow very well. Alrighty, so I've spent an afternoon with the Cavalli diver from Beaufort. What do I think? Well, again, I believe this is coming in at a fairly entry-level price point, and for an STP-111 automatic, you know, hacking hand wind, date complication, sapphire crystal, an overall really fun vintage aesthetic, a sub 40 millimeter case dimension, and really, really, really great finishing all around. I'm talking about a beautiful fume dial, a great handset, really functional bezel. I think I said 200 meter water resistance rating already. Display case back. It's just a very functional diver that's not gargantuan on the wrist and has really fun design language. So if you're looking for a classic dive watch that's also, you know, giving you the added confidence of a modern built watch, then this is definitely a contender. Again, this is, I think, almost assuredly coming in under the $500 price point. So that's definitely something to consider. I really, really like the Aero Timer, that salmon dial watch from them when I reviewed it. And I'm happy to see that this newest offering from them is equally as impressive. So yeah, guys, keep crushing it, Beaufort. And yeah, I again, the best thing you guys can do other than just watching the content is commenting, because number one, I want to interact with you guys, but also right now it seems like comments really help the algorithm. So what do you think about this watch? Is this something you would wear? Do you like it? Do you not like it? What do you think about the price and the specs? Leave me that comment and I'd love to hear from you there. And of course, special thanks to Beaufort for sponsoring this episode. We can't do Microbrand Monday without the support of these Microbrand watchmakers. And thank you, the viewer. Again, what is a channel without a viewer? We have a whole bunch of projects coming down the pipeline for you guys, and Gato and I, everyone here at the Time Teller channel, we are super duper stoked to bring you some awesome new content. So stay tuned for everything we have in the works. And yeah, guys, there's a whole bunch of ways for you to support us. You can check out the channel memberships, $4.99 a month. You get some extra content there and access to, the members only Discord chat where we do a weekly meetup on Discord, and it is so much fun. And yeah, we got a bunch of affiliate links. Every time you shop using those links, you help the channel out. You can check out my personal website, www.thetimetellershop.com, the #1 place to find affordable vintage luxury watches handpicked by me. And we just did a restock, and we do a restock every week. So please don't miss out. We have a bunch of really fun merch as well. If you want some really cool t-shirts that I designed, you can check out those. And yeah, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me on this episode of Microbrand Monday. We will see you on the next one. Stay happy, stay healthy, stay blessed. I'm Jory Goodman, the Time Teller, and always remember, I didn't invent time. I just tell it.